Dad left a voice message. You ruined everything by being born. Mom giggled. You're just a wallet to us now. So I said nothing, just left. Then I shut down every auto payment and canceled something important to them. Hours later, my voicemail filled with screams, and the bank called me to confirm if I'd filed the fraud claim. I just smiled, and then I almost exploded when I heard it. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from my dad. I hadn't even noticed I'd missed a call. Then another came in. This one from my mom. I excused myself, stepped outside, and put in my earbuds. It wasn't cold, but my hands were shaking. The first one hit like a truck. You ruined everything by being born. Just like that. Flat, calm, no anger, no hesitation. Like it was the conclusion of a long conversation I hadn't been invited to. The second voicemail was worse. You're just a wallet to us now. That's all you've ever been. At least your brothers gave us something real. Grandchildren, you nothing. She actually giggled before she hung up. Like she was proud of that last jab. Like it was some kind of punchline. And the worst part, I knew exactly what triggered it. It was my idea. I had called them earlier that day. Said I wanted to do something we hadn't done in years. Gather the whole family together. All of us rent a house for a weekend somewhere peaceful. Just relax, catch up, be around each other. I told them I'd pay for everything. It had been too long. I said, we needed this. They didn't even pause. My mom said, we don't want that. That's not what we need from you. My dad added, you've never done anything meaningful for this family. No kids, no legacy. You're just the one who sends the money. That was it. No thank you. No consideration. Just a rejection with an insult baked in. Like spending time with me was a burden compared to the value my brothers brought just by producing grandchildren. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just said okay and hung up. But by the time I got those voicemails a few hours later, something inside me broke. They weren't mad because I suggested a family trip. They were mad because I stepped out of my role. Because for the first time in years, I offered them something other than money. And it made them realize just how useless I was to them without it. So I made a decision. I went home, walked into my office, and sat at my desk with a strange kind of focus. I opened every single account linked to them and started shutting things down. Their rent payments gone. Utility bills canceled. Cell phone plan revoked. Car insurance terminated. Shared Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, grocery delivery all disabled. One by one. No warnings. Then I filed a fraud report on the last $3,000 I sent them. The bank called me within hours. Hi, Mr. Taylor. We're reviewing a possible unauthorized transaction. Can you confirm this money wasn't sent by you? That's right. The account was frozen that afternoon. I sat back in my chair and waited. By dinner time, it started. My mom left a string of voicemails saying I'd left them with nothing. My dad called 6 times in a row shouting in the last one that I had betrayed the people who gave me life. Zach, my youngest brother, finally texted me. Dude, what is happening? They're losing it. I didn't answer. Natalie watched all this unfold in silence. She knew the moment had come. She'd been trying to make me see it for months that I wasn't being a good son. I was being an exploited one. That real family doesn't make love conditional on direct deposit. I always pushed back, said I was just doing my part, that it was my duty. But hearing those voicemails made everything clear. They didn't love me. They tolerated me because I paid them to, and now that paycheck was gone. They had no idea this was only the beginning. I didn't send a warning, not a heads up, not a single text, just silence. After shutting down everything tied to my name, I waited. I knew what would happen. I just didn't expect how fast. By the second day, their lights were off. By the third, their phones were dead. The rent hadn't cleared, so their landlord started calling me, which told me everything I needed to know. They gave him my number instead of taking responsibility themselves. I told him I was no longer involved. Then I blocked him. Natalie said it was time to cut the root, not just trim the branches. So I went one step further. I pulled every single financial document they'd ever sent me. Bank transfers, receipts, cell logs, even old texts asking for loan money. They never paid back. I emailed it all to the fraud department at the bank. Said I believed someone was using my name and financial information without full consent, that I had only recently realized how deep it went. I used careful language, legal sounding, the kind of email that gets flagged, reviewed, escalated. They froze both of my parents' individual accounts, not just the shared one. They flagged them for investigation, and they were holding the $3,000 I reported. That's when the calls stopped being about guilt and started being about panic. You can't just cut us off, my dad said. We raised you. We made you. You're trying to destroy our lives. My mom added, you don't know what you're doing. I didn't reply to. I blocked them both. I figured they'd go through my brothers next, and I was right. Zach called me 2 days later, pissed. They're going to lose the house, man. You seriously can't just shut everything down like this. I told him something I should have said years ago. You and Dylan live 10 minutes from them. You both have jobs. You both have kids. Maybe it's your turn now. He started shouting. Said I was heartless. Said I was acting like I didn't have a family. I told him I had a family. I was building one with someone who didn't treat me like a vending machine. He hung up. Dylan didn't even bother calling. He sent a 3-line message. Don't drag us into your drama. You've always had issues. Natalie read the text and just shook her head. You see it now, don't you? I did. I saw it all. My parents didn't just use me. They trained everyone else to expect me to carry the load. I wasn't their son. I was the family backup plan, the ATM, the safety net, the one they could blame when things fell apart. And now the net was gone. But then something happened that I didn't expect. A week later, my parents showed up at Zach's place with gifts for the kids. Big smiles, hugs, like nothing had happened. My mom posted pictures on Facebook, captioned them, "Grateful for the ones who give life meaning." Natalie saw it first. They're playing the long game. She was right. They were trying to replace me, rewrite the story, cut me out like a bad chapter, and make the new ones look better. I didn't care about the pictures. What got me was the silence from Zach and Dylan. No one called to say, hey, this is weird. No one said they still owe you an apology. They were fine with it. Fine with pretending everything was normal so long as someone else took the fall. But they were wrong about one thing. I wasn't done yet. The silence didn't bother me. Not right away. I was actually relieved. For the first time in years, my Friday morning wasn't tied to an automatic transfer. I didn't wake up checking my balance, calculating what I could keep and what I had to send. I didn't see the usual text from my mom reminding me it was that time again. But by the second Friday, something in me tensed up out of habit, like muscle memory. I opened the banking app anyway, just to see it. The number sat there untouched. Then came the text from Zach. So, are you seriously not sending the $500 anymore? Not, hey, how are you? Not, what happened between you and mom and dad? Just a financial expectation in a single line. I typed and deleted a reply twice before sending what I really meant. You send it. He left me on read. Later that night, Natalie and I were watching a movie when my phone buzzed again. This time it was my dad unblocked, somehow calling from a new number. He didn't yell. He didn't even sound angry. He sounded tired. We know you're mad, but it's time to move on. This is your responsibility. Your brothers can't carry this. They have their own families. You don't. That hit in a different way. Natalie saw my jaw clench and grabbed the remote. Pause the movie. Let them fall. She said, if they were decent people, they wouldn't need to be carried. But I wasn't raised to let anything fall. That was the problem. I'd been taught that I was the fallback, the one who would always clean up, that being childless made me less valuable, that my worth was tied to how much I gave, not who I was. So I called the bank again, this time not to report fraud, but to make sure it stuck. I told them I believed multiple transfers over the years may have been under false pretenses, that I never received documentation, repayment, or acknowledgement. They took notes. They said if the investigation expanded, there might be legal consequences. Then I dropped the bomb. I told them to flag every account associated with those transfers for potential abuse and financial manipulation. They froze 3 more accounts. 2 in my dad's name, 1 in my mom's. I didn't tell anyone. I just watched the panic ripple through the family chat. Dylan messaged the group. Okay, who did this? Dad's account is locked again. Zach replied, Bro, Jack's taking this way too far. I typed back, I'm just doing what you should have done years ago, holding them accountable. Dylan left the group chat. The next day, Zach called me, said our parents were going to lose their house, that the utilities were 2 weeks overdue, that if I didn't fix this, the whole family was going to collapse. I told him this wasn't my family anymore. That family doesn't call you a failure for not reproducing. That family doesn't drain your paycheck and laugh when you ask for time together. He said something then that sealed it all. Fine, we'll figure it out. But you better not show up here asking for anything ever again. I laughed. Ask for what? I already had everything I needed. A clear conscience, a clean break, and the first quiet Friday I could remember in years. I didn't expect Zach to call again, but he did. He sounded different this time. Less angry, more desperate. Said he and Dylan had been arguing all week. That Dylan refused to chip in a dime to help our parents even though they were now 2 months behind on rent and their internet had been cut off. Said Dylan was blaming him for everything. Zach kept repeating the same thing over and over. This was never supposed to be on us. You were handling it. Why would you stop? That was the moment it really landed for me. They hadn't just been ignoring what I'd been doing for years. They built their entire comfort around it. I wasn't just supporting our parents. I was protecting my brothers from ever having to face it. So, I said it clearly because I'm not the wallet anymore. Pick someone else. He didn't respond. I knew what was coming next and I was ready for it. That weekend, our mom posted a photo of her and Dylan's kids at a park. The caption said, Thank God for the children who don't abandon their families. No mention of who was paying the photographer. I recognized the style. They'd used the same woman I used to book for them back when I was footing the bill for Christmas cards and family portraits. Natalie saw the post, showed it to me with a blank face, and asked, What now? I thought about it and then I messaged Zach and Dylan in a group chat, just the 3 of us. I told them everything. Every payment I made over the last 5 years. Rent, car repairs, groceries, utilities, birthday gifts for the grandkids that had their names on the tags but were charged to my card. Every single $500 transfer listed totaled $126,500 in total. Then I added one more sentence. So unless one of you plans to take over, they'll be on their own. Zach replied first. This is insane. You can't just drop it like this. You think this makes you look good? Dylan finally spoke. You didn't have to pay it. No one forced you. That one hit hard. Not because it was wrong, but because it was exactly what I used to tell myself. That I was doing it willingly. That it was noble. That I was needed. But it wasn't willingness. It was fear. Fear that if I stopped, the whole family would turn on me. And now that I had, they did. A week later, I got an email from the bank. They had concluded their review and decided not to reverse the fraud claims. They said due to the irregularities and lack of documentation, the accounts would remain suspended. The funds were permanently held. I didn't reply. I just forwarded the email to my parents without a word. That Sunday, I heard from Zach again. Not through a message. He showed up at my door. Natalie answered it. He asked to speak to me alone. I stepped outside. He stood on the porch like he didn't recognize me. I'm not doing it, he said. I'm not giving them anything. I have my own family. I waited. You win, man. You broke everything. Then he walked off. I didn't stop him. I went back inside, sat down, and realized something that should have been obvious. I never wanted to win. I just wanted them to stop taking. They showed up with gifts wrapped labeled bright red bows. My parents. It was Christmas Eve and Natalie and I were hosting dinner for a few friends. Nothing big, nothing family. I hadn't spoken to my parents in over a month and as far as I knew, either had Zach or Dylan. I hadn't invited anyone from that side. So, when I opened the door and saw them standing there on the porch dressed like they just stepped out of a department store catalog, I froze. My mom was holding a tray of homemade cookies. We didn't want to spend the holidays alone, she said. Like that explained anything. Natalie came to the door behind me, didn't say a word. I stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind me, and asked what they were doing. We came to make peace, my dad said. Families fight. That's normal. But this distance isn't. I didn't answer. I was trying to figure out who had told them where we'd be. I never gave them our address. That's when it hit me, Zach. He'd said he was done, but apparently not enough to stop leaking information. Before I could say anything, my mom added something that made my stomach twist. We brought gifts for the kids. The kids? We don't have any kids. She met Natalie's niece and nephew, 2 little kids we were babysitting for the weekend. They weren't even related to us, just part of a favor Natalie had promised her sister. My parents had seen them on Facebook. Natalie had posted a photo 2 days earlier. Somehow, they'd convinced themselves that showing up with gifts for 2 random children would earn them a seat at our table again. I told them we were in the middle of something, that they needed to leave. My dad's expression didn't change. My mom looked confused, like she genuinely didn't understand why this wasn't working. We're trying, she said. Isn't that what matters? I didn't answer, just turned, opened the door, and walked back inside. Natalie didn't even ask. She already knew. She grabbed the tray of cookies out of my hands, tossed it straight into the trash, and went back to the living room like it never happened. Later that night, I got a text from Dylan. Heard they showed up. They do this every year to someone. Last year, it was Zach. They just pop in. Hope for a meal and some fake forgiveness. I replied, they brought gifts for someone else's kids. Dylan didn't respond. I sat with that for a long time. Not just the absurdity of it, but the sheer level of denial. My parents had found a way to convince themselves they were still the good guys. That one tray of cookies and a few toys could erase what they said, that they were entitled to show up wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted, as long as they had props. But the most unexpected part came 2 days later. A certified letter showed up at my door. It was from my parents, not an apology, a request. They were asking me to resume the $500 a week officially, formally. They included a list of expenses, a handwritten budget. It looked like something a kid might put together for a school project. They even included a note at the bottom that read, "We trust you'll do the right thing." I handed it to Natalie without a word. She skimmed it, laughed once quietly. They think they're still in charge, she said. And somehow that made it worse because they weren't asking. They were assuming, betting that under all of it I was still who I used to be. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I mailed them a check. I did it quietly. No message, no note, just $500 with their names written clearly across the front. No automatic transfers, no digital trail, just a piece of paper and a stamp. A single physical reminder of what they used to take without asking. Natalie wasn't thrilled. We talked about it for a while, maybe too long. I didn't have some noble reason. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't guilt. It was just reality. No one else was going to help them. Zach had gone full ghost. Dylan was pretending they didn't exist. Their house was still standing barely. I knew what would happen if I didn't step in again. I knew what it meant. You're doing it because they broke you down for years, Natalie said. And now you don't know how to stop. She wasn't wrong, but I told her this was the last time. One check, nothing more. I didn't say it to make her feel better. I said it to remind myself. They cashed it 2 days later. Then the messages started again, but this time they weren't from my parents. They were from Dylan. You paid them after everything? Then Zach chimed in too. So now we look like the selfish ones. I didn't answer either of them at first. Let it simmer. A week later, Natalie and I were out at a small restaurant when Dylan showed up. I hadn't told anyone where we were going, but he came in, sat down at the next table like it was a coincidence. It wasn't. You've put us in a bad spot, he said. Now they're calling us again, telling everyone that you're the good son. I just stared at him. You had 10 years to help, I said. I gave up almost everything so you could pretend they were fine. Now you're mad because they're not pretending anymore. He didn't answer, just stood up and left, muttering something I didn't catch. 2 days later, I got a letter from my parents again. This time, it wasn't a budget. It was a birth announcement, a copy of a letter they had written and mailed to friends and family, announcing that Zach and his wife were expecting another baby. They included a note just for me. Maybe next time you'll have something real to offer. Natalie saw it before I did. Tore it in half without blinking. They were never going to stop. Not as long as I had anything left to give. So I did one more thing. I wrote back. Not a check. Not a reply. A full signed legal document. A formal cease and desist prepared by a lawyer Natalie found. No more contact, no more money. Any further financial requests would be treated as harassment. They tried calling. I blocked every number. Zach texted me, "You're dead to them now." I replied, "They've been dead to me for years. I just finally admitted it." Then I left the group chat. 3 months passed. No calls, no letters, nothing. But on Easter, I got a text from Dylan out of nowhere. "They're coming over for dinner. Just thought you'd want to know." I didn't answer. Natalie and I sat on our porch that night. No family, no obligations, just peace. And it finally felt like I wasn't a wallet anymore. Just a person free. I thought it was over. The cease and is this letter worked. The text stopped. The calls stopped. Holidays came and went, and I spent them in peace for the first time in years. Natalie and I started talking about moving. New city, fresh start. Then I got the letter. Came from a law office. Not one I recognized. Inside was a copy of a will, and signed, but detailed. Handwritten additions in the margins. It had my parents' names on it and mine. At first, I thought it was a threat, a scare tactic, but it wasn't. They were splitting everything evenly. 3 ways, me, Zach, and Dylan. A house barely worth anything. Some savings, a beat-up car, nothing special, but there it was. Attached was a note written by my mother. Not cruel, not angry, just this. "We never planned for things to end like this. But if you're reading this, it means we tried everything else. You're still our son, whether you believe it or not." It didn't make me cry. It didn't soften me. It just sat there. What stood out wasn't the will. It was the envelope it came in. It wasn't mailed from their home address. It was sent from Zach's. I sat with that for a full day before I said anything. Then I called him. "You sent the letter." He didn't deny it, just sighed. "They asked me to hold on to it in case something happened. They said, 'You need to know they still cared.'" I laughed. "So they left their last apology in your hands." He was quiet for a long time. "They're not well, Jack." I waited. "Mom's got early-stage dementia. Dad's been covering for her." That's why the voicemails didn't make sense. Why they lashed out so fast. She doesn't always know what she's saying anymore. And he just repeats whatever she does. It hit me differently than I expected. Not guilt, just clarity. The whole thing hadn't been a master plan. It was rot. Quiet, creeping rot that had eaten everything from the inside. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to carry it." "You already carried everything else." There it was. The final answer. The one thing I hadn't seen coming. I wasn't just the one they leaned on. I was the one they were hiding things from, because if I knew, I'd try to fix it. And if I tried to fix it, they'd have to admit they were broken. Zach asked if I wanted to come visit. I said, no, not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to give and nothing left to take. They weren't monsters. They were damaged people who turned damage into a way of life. And I had spent my whole adulthood trying to redeem people who didn't want redemption, just maintenance. The final payment was understanding, not forgiveness. Natalie and I moved 2 months later. New city, new apartment, no forwarding address. I never sent another check. They never asked again. And for once, everything was exactly what it deserved to be. Not happy, just fair.